I mean, he contended at Augusta one year, and he was like roofing his 3-wood every time he got it out. I mean, this guy is so good, or has been so good. And I just hope that he gets his game back to some sort of competitive level. And I hope that the golfing world gives him the respect he deserves. And I think that would be the highlight of my golf watching career if this guy got near to winning a major again.
I'm actually like getting goosebumps as you even talk about it. As in, like, it's exciting to think of him coming back and like having one last hurrah. It's actually like it is actually making my skin tingle a bit. But then I've sort of grown up with him, and I have the same. I read an interview with Liam Gallagher in Q magazine last night, and like world's biggest plonker. But I grew up with him as well as like a sort of icon of my youth. And Tiger sort of is the same for me in golf. But you're younger than me, Craig.
Yeah, I feel quite deprived of what the rest of the panel have seen of Tiger Woods. I was saying before that I think my first main memory of Tiger was at the Masters in 2005. So my time watching Tiger has been really through his injuries and antics and all the rest of it. But I think to have him coming back is just a breath of fresh air, really. I just can't wait to see him back, and hopefully, like Dan says, he can get to some sort of level again where he's hauling great putts, he's teeing it up perfectly on the fairway, and hopefully winning some tournaments. Whether he can or not is a different question. Yeah. But I think, like Dan said before as well, for people to like question him and what wanting to do badly, I just think for what he's done for the game since he came on the scene in '97, why wouldn't you want someone back to his best and competing with the likes of McIlroy and Spieth and Day? Like I say, that might not be possible, but we can't wait and see.
Well, yeah, like there's so many things from what you and Dan have just said that like we don't want to turn into a Tiger loving, but the top three thing, like it's just, I think there's a very bit of confused thinking amongst the public and perhaps amongst the media where there's this sort of almost weariness about Tiger. He's announced his return so often, he's had so many false starts in the last couple of years. Obviously his off-course antics attracted some negative publicity. And we sort of see this in the feedback that we get on social media, that he sort of splits opinion. Yet we're quite happily be fed this line about, oh, he's been replaced by the top three. And the fact is, he just hasn't. So if there's something that's been fabricated by the media, it's that there's a dominant force in golf currently, and there isn't.
I think golf and people who like golf are kind of desperate for this Arnie, Jack, Gary Player situation again of the 60s and 70s. And obviously with Tiger, there was no rivalry, was there? When he was at his peak, he was just too good for everybody, and probably, completely ruined Ernie Els' career for a while, didn't he? He dominated him that much. He has had no peer, Tiger, and I think there's probably some people out there who want kind of wistful return, don't they, to that. Look at all these great players who are going hammer and tong at all the majors, and if Tiger comes back and he's at his best, I know that probably won't happen, but if he's at his best, there's no one to touch him.
To pick up on a couple of points there, the desire for a rivalry, he is the rivalry. He created a rivalry through that whole era. He was the man to beat every week. When Harrington won his 2 majors in 2008 at Birkdale and wherever he won his PGA, and there was talk at the time of them putting an asterisk by it because the Woods didn't compete. Now McIlroy's missed however many majors he's missed in the last couple of years. There's been no talk about asterisks next to him, and he is the only person, in my opinion, that comes close to creating the aura that Woods does, mainly because of how he holds himself. He bounces around the golf course, his clothes are too tight, he looks like he might win. He looks like he might win every week, but he's not even in the same stratosphere. And you say, oh, he competed at the Masters. He won the US Open as basically a cripple. So I've just read Haney's book, and then I've read Steve Williams' book, who tell the story of that week. And it is ridiculous. Like, the man couldn't stand up. His leg was in a brace practicing in the weeks run up to that. He turned up at Torrey Pines, couldn't keep the ball on the golf course, like ran out of balls in a practice round. Haney said, look, we can't have you practicing in this condition, it's just embarrassing. Took him off to a local golf club. And his coach was still convinced that he wouldn't make the cut in that event, and he won it in over 5 rounds in an 18-hole playoff on one leg. Like, the guy is just, at that point, everything about him, his golf, his mindset, his aura, just purely dominated the sport, like nobody else in my lifetime in any other sport.
So why is it that people are so critical of him when he wins?
People don't like winners, not repeated, not relentless winners. People don't like them. If you look at sort of snooker as a comparable sport in the 1980s and 1990s with Steve Davis and Stephen Hendry, people hated them.
Well, he was really boring, wasn't he?
They were, but they hated them, didn't they? They hated them because they were relentless winners. People like to knock others down when they get to the top.
Well, I think the snooker thing, like O'Sullivan is like a good example where he has an aura. On his day, he's like absolutely, definitely better than anybody else. He can beat people left-handed or right-handed. And there is a sort of an element of negativity around O'Sullivan because he's a bit weird and because of his kind of antics on and off the snooker table. And I think if we're sort of going to move this debate on, it's probably worth sort of talking a little bit about, people don't like some of Tiger's behaviour. And I don't know what we sort of think about that, whether that's a factor in we respect his dominance, we think he's a great golfer, but do we have any sort of affection for him as a sportsman?
Well, I think Tiger's life has been so far from normal for so long. I don't think people understand like quite the way he was brought up and the way that he's been handled and his very complex relationship with his father. These have all created the person that you see today. You also have to remember that a massive part of Tiger's thing was the intimidation and aura. And I've watched him, been lucky enough to be close to him at various championships, and you've never felt anything like it when the guy walked past you. And part of that was being this unknowable figure, because his rivals were terrified of him. And when he started getting friendly with Rory a few years ago, you could see that he didn't think he was competitive. Because if he thought he was competitive, he wouldn't have gone near Rory at that particular time. And that was a sign that the man had changed over the years. But his entire persona was about beating people and intimidating people and basically laughing at them. He wanted to crush them. He wanted to crush Garcia with his famous Tweety Pie comment at Hoylake in 2000. I mean, he took great pleasure, not just beating the likes of Els and Mickelson and Garcia, but absolutely destroying them. You might remember the time when Stephen Ames had a pop at him before playing him in the World Match Play one year about how he didn't think Tiger was playing very well. Tiger beat him, I think it was 9-7 or something, and it was just like, get out of my sight, Ames. That's the way this guy played. Was part of what made him great. And I thought that was fascinating to watch, and seeing lots of very, very good players, even great players, struggle to get over the line. I mean, he cheated them out of majors in the sense that he won so many. There was nothing else to go at. Monty didn't win a major. Well, one of the reasons is that 2 a year were just Tiger, so he only had half as many to go at to start with. And I don't think you do that by being a normal person. So I just look at Tiger's personality and just think it's absolutely fascinating.
So you follow a lot of sport. You've got a lot of heroes. How much is his off-course stuff or his general sort of cold demeanour an issue for you?
His off-course stuff, it's his life, isn't it? And because he's such a well-known sportsman, he's going to be in the public eye. And when that came out, what had happened, he was obviously going to attract a lot of criticism from everyone, pretty much. But let's not just think he's the only person that's done it. There'll be hundreds and thousands of other sports people that probably, don't want to name any names, but have probably done it. Do you know what I mean? But he because did a lot, he did do it a lot. But yeah, it's terrible what he done, and you've got a question: if he didn't get caught, would he have carried on doing it? Probably, because he was Tiger Woods. You could do pretty much what you wanted. It doesn't take away what he's done on the course on me, because what he's done on the course in the time that I've seen him has just been unbelievable. So, as a sports person on the course, he's definitely one of my heroes. I've grown up watching him. Yeah. Obviously, I didn't get to see the earlier days, but
you're basically Craig's saying shagging doesn't matter, golf's the thing, and he's a hero. So like putting that to one side, Steve, you're like a jobbing journalist, have been for many years, and his treatment of the press has been pretty dismissive over most of his career. He's tried to change that more latterly. So
has he? Has he really? I'm not sure he has. I don't think Tiger's capable of being open and honest with people. I don't think he is. But this is not a new thing for for working golf journalists. They know what Tiger's like, and they still lap up every word and every quote. I think he was a little more open when he first started, and he got stitched up a couple of times, and that made him very guarded, and now like 99% of PGA Tour players, and European Tour players, it's, you know, say nothing, do nothing. You know, McIlroy is the obvious exception to that, and that's why we find him completely refreshing. But as I've said in these podcasts before, you know, every time Rory says something that's slightly controversial, people jump down his throat. So, you know, if you want an easy life, which he probably does, Tiger, given the publicity, given the focus he's under every single day and every minute of his life, I'm not surprised he isn't exactly sunshine and light in press conferences.
Why is it that with many sportsmen we revel in their flaws and we think they're much more human and likeable as a result? I mean, you know, again, we don't want to name too many names here, but there are a number of characters in golf and in other sports, and we think it's hilarious that what they get up to off the course. And it's funny to me that when everyone suddenly found out what Tiger had been doing, and there've been rumours for years, haven't there, but nobody knew whether they were true or not really. Isn't it funny that the result was people laughed at him, but I didn't really see anybody like warm to him and say, well, do you know what, that might have been me if I'd have been in that position, I might have behaved in that way.
Well, let's face it as well, like these kind of armchair moralisers, like if they were the number one golfer in the world with all of the money and the ability, as Craig says, to do what he wants when he wants, they absolutely would fill their boots and you pick your debauchery, basically. They just max out on it. But the point you were making, Dan, earlier about how he's fascinating, like all professional sportsmen are to some degree freaks because they've committed themselves to one particular thing. They've spent hours practicing when everyone else is in the pub. They've like been one-eyed about it. They've lost friends, presumably, on the amount they committed to their sport. They haven't lived normal lives. He's like that writ large. So I want my sports icons, the weirder the better. He's been living in that bubble since he was 2 years old, and everything he's done has been about beating Jack's record, winning majors. And that he just, therefore, when he's put into a normal scenario, i.e. you've been caught out here, Tiger, he doesn't react in a normal way. He does a weird press conference in a suit, in a formal... I mean, that was just one of the most bizarre things ever. But I mean, bring it on. Like, you could talk about him all day, couldn't you?
There's a lot of crap said, isn't there, about sports people as role models, and because you're high profile, you have to be a figure of respect for the nation's youth. I think that's rubbish. That's absolutely rubbish. I don't watch Tiger to see how he's going to help the next generation of kids in that way. I want to see him do it by hitting great shots on a golf course. That's it. I couldn't care less what he does off the course, as long as it's not criminal.
I think there is something about it where if it was in another sport, we'd all think, oh, this is just funny because that's just what he does. And there is something with golf, and it's a curious link with etiquette, that somehow that he should behave in a slightly different way. But you know, the people who would hate him will tell you who their favourite golfers are, and again, without naming names. I mean, this was happening. This was happening plenty in the 50s and 60s and 70s, right? It was just that in this era, it's no longer possible that you can get away with it because, you know, relationships have changed. In the old days, the journalists were friends with the players, and it was just turn a blind eye stuff. They knew what was happening, but they didn't bother to report it. Now, unfortunately, it's more confrontational, oppositional, and if you think you can find out that someone's been doing something they shouldn't, then it's a rush to get it out there, and you've broken the story. So the relationships have changed, like the world's changed. But the idea that our sporting heroes from yesteryear were purer than what we have now, I'm sorry, I just don't go for it, and I think that's a very naive view if you think that.
He is a single-minded sportsman where winning is the only thing that matters, and he is the only thing that matters in his world. But he's also a geek. Like he's a proper golf geek.
He's shy. He's awkward.
There are two examples from Haney's book. I think they're both in Haney's book. One is to do with a popsicle, whereby Hank Haney obviously spends a lot of time with Tiger Woods, stays in his house when he's down visiting him in Jupiter, wherever it is, where they practice. And Haney said for weeks, months, years even, that Tiger would never make him a drink, would never get him an ice cream. And there's one example of them sitting on the couch. Tiger plays video games, so Haney's literally sitting there watching Tiger play a video game. Tiger goes to the fridge and gets himself a popsicle, comes back, Haney hasn't got a popsicle, so he's bitten his tongue for months, and eventually plucks up the courage to say, I'd quite like a popsicle, Tiger. I don't know what a popsicle is, I'm presuming it's ice cream. And Tiger says, yeah, sure, there's plenty in the fridge, help yourself. So even having it pointed out to him that he's been acting like a selfish prat for months, he still doesn't get it. And the second thing is that Haney was struggling to make Tiger hit bump and run shots, and Tiger was obsessed with hitting pitches that bounced and checked. And Haney says, why can you not just get a straighter face club out and bump and run it? And Tiger says, because the chicks love the spin. So he literally thinks that there's a cool way of hitting a golf shot, and this is the guy who's world number one, and he's thinking like a assistant pro with a white belt, basically. So I think he's just endlessly fascinating, basically.
We said it wasn't going to turn into a love-in, didn't we?
Yeah.
But it kind of has a bit. So shall we move it on? I mean, what are we expecting from him? Because he's come back with his game in some disarray in the past, hasn't he? And I mean, the thing that's going to be most fascinating to me is not to do with his long game and how he's recovered from his injuries. It's going to be whether he can chip, because that is something that doesn't necessarily heal, is it? This is a guy who a year or so ago, whenever it was chili dipping chips like any of us lot. How do we think he's going to play?
I think really you've got to think that this is his last chance. I think if he comes away from this with another injury, I don't think I think this is definitely his last chance. I remember watching him at the Farmers Insurance last year, and it was just one of the saddest things I've ever seen. Them first 11 holes, right, left, duff chips. I was just thinking, this just isn't the Tiger Woods that I know. And if he comes back and that's what he's doing, then it'll be even sadder than it was last year. But I think if you can get back to some sort of form, you can definitely give the guys at the top a run for the money. I think, like you said before, Spieth and Day haven't really done much since they won the majors. McIlroy's hit and miss. He's Tiger's 711th in the world, I think now, world ranking, something like that. It's going to take a big effort, and like you say, he's coming up to 41 years old now. So can he get back to any sort of form of glory? Possibly.
The fitness thing is obviously a question mark, definitely, and the sort of damage that his layoff and everything that's gone with it that's done to his brain and his sort of mental approach to golf is definitely a question mark. But all of the counter argument to his chunk chips and his short game that's in tatters, it's only 2013, it's only 3 years ago that he was PGA Tour Player of the Year. He won 5 times on tour that year, and this is a guy who basically owned Augusta in his pomp. So if he gets his game in any sort of shape going to the Masters, then he's in the mix, I would say.
Can he hit the 90% shot? That's the thing. I mean, he's swung at supersonic speeds for 20 years. He can't do it anymore. If he takes 5% off his swing, just 5%, he'll still hit it 290 off the tee. He'll still laser irons into the green, and he'll still win. But mentally, can he do that? There was, for me, I didn't think he could the last time. I think he just couldn't come to terms with the fact that these younger guns were past him, and because that had always been his game. He was always not the longest on tour, but he was up there. And he was the one that was smacking the ball as hard as he could, and that's what his weight training was for. That was what all the work was for, basically, to fire the ball as hard as he could. He can't do that anymore. People forget, even so, talking about his form, and all those chunk chips. He was 10th at the Wyndham and then went for back surgery a week or so later, didn't he? So the form is still there if he just relaxes a bit, stops trying to compete with people who are 25, then he can definitely win tournaments in his 40s. Look at people who've done it. Vijay Singh won nearly all of his tournaments, didn't he, in his 40s?
Yeah, I just hope that he's still deluded, because he kind of have to be. If you think about that famous line of Jack Nicklaus's about how he says he never three-putted in a major, and then every time one puts one out, he goes, no, that wasn't a three-putt. That you sort of have to be like that, and the big thing about Tiger is that self-belief, and the thing that he's better and stronger and more skillful and better under pressure. That's such a huge part of him. So that I think he is diminished to some degree. But the key to me to his success, obviously you don't really know the state of his body, but presuming that he can get himself fit, I'm more concerned about whether he's still deluded enough to think that he's better than everyone. Because if he has got that mindset, then I think he'll compete again.
Well, I think it's like you said there, Dan. Tiger doesn't want to come second. He doesn't want to come third. He wants to win, and I think the fact that he's given it another go coming back after that injury he's had and his back surgery, I think that kind of says that he does think he can win. I don't think he'd be coming back just to get top 5s, top 10s. I think it could have been very easy for him just to retire now if he thought he wasn't good enough to compete. I think the fact he's coming back and giving it another go seems
He really
to me
wants
that
to
he
win
really
those
wants.
extra 4 majors.
Yeah.
I think from our point of view, does it matter if he wins again? It's just amazing to see him back. And just to sort of revisit the first point, like from golf's perspective, having him back is such a massive thing. Like I was reading something the other day in the wake of Nike pulling out of hardware and ball in golf. And I think that you can attribute that perhaps entirely due to Tiger's potential retirement or a view at Nike that he would never return fully. If you look, there's a stat doing the rounds on Google searches worldwide for anything related to golf, which throughout his career on a generally upward curve, the massive spike when he was caught out in 2009, and a generally downward curve since. And almost sort of flatline now with Tiger sort of absent from the game. And that tells you, I think, all you need to know about Nike, who are only interested in sort of global megastars in terms of their endorsements. And Tiger's the only one that golf's got. So whether he returns to winning ways or not, from my point of view, is basically irrelevant. I really hope he does. I really hope he beats Jack's record. But to have him back, just from an interest point of view, interest in our sport point of view, is absolutely priceless, basically.
Do you think you will beat Jack's record?
I think he'll win another major, yeah.
Yeah.
I think if he gets his game in shape, then he's basically unbeatable at Augusta. And if he gets a bouncy Open, like look what he did at Hoylake, he won it with a 5-iron, basically.
If he wins another major, it's one of golf's greatest ever stories, I think.
So let's hope he does. I think that's enough on Tiger Woods. That's enough on this week's podcast. Thank you, Steve.
Cheers.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Cheers, Tom.
Maybe have Craig back, will we?
Yeah, I think I added a little je ne sais quoi.
Yeah. So we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye, Bob.